Afternoon and good evening, and welcome to this webinar on how to ace GMAT reading comprehension. My name is Rajat Sudana. I am one of the co-founders of e-GMAT, and I'm going to be your co-host today. Supporting me in this webinar, or rather, I am supporting Payal Tanan in this webinar, who's going to be your main host. And then supporting both of us, we have Sandeep. Sandeep is a GMAT strategy expert, and he'll make sure that your questions get answered. The topic of this webinar is how to ace GMAT reading comprehension. And in this webinar, we talk about some key reading strategies using which we help you improve your ability to comprehend what the author is trying to say and consequently improve your ability in GMAT RC. It's a fairly application focused webinar, and to make sure that you're well prepared to do justice to the webinar to get the most out of it, we send these two video lessons your way. Both of them are on Main Point. If you've gone through these video lessons, that's really great. You would get the most out of this webinar. If you've not gone through these video lessons, then I would very strongly recommend that you go through them towards the end of this webinar. Also, this is a fairly heavily attended webinar. I have about 145 students in this webinar right now, and I do anticipate this number to go up. And to make sure that we modulate the webinar according to the needs of this group, we ask these two leading questions, which is the first one is, when do you plan to take the test? And based on the data in the bottom left-hand poll right now, what I can really see is we've actually 5 groups. They're more or less similar. The biggest group is 25%, folks who have more than 60 days. The smallest group is 15%, those who have between a month and 45 days before their test. Now, the beauty of this is, if you put in about 15 hours applying these strategies that Payal would talk about, you're going to find that your overall RC ability will improve significantly. All right, with regards to your target GMAT score, what I really see is about 58% of you are aiming for a score of 730 or higher, another 28% in that 720 bucket, and then about 13.5% of you are in that 600 to 700 bucket. Now, with that, I also want to talk about some upcoming free sessions that we have. So we have a few upcoming free sessions next week. We have one free webinar on how to ace critical reasoning questions, more specifically assumption questions. In this webinar, we talk about the fundamentals-based approach to pre-thinking, and pre-thinking being such a foundation concept in GMAT critical reasoning. Once you master pre-thinking, you can apply it not only to assumption questions, but to evaluate, strengthen, weaken, and to a certain degree to bold-face questions as well. So it's about 75% of all the questions that you're likely to see on the test on GMAT CR. And then next Sunday we have a free webinar on algebra. Again, another very application focused webinar. In this, we look at just if you just have the knowledge of basic concepts in algebra, how you can apply those concepts using a unified approach to solve the easiest and the most challenging questions. Okay, with that, let me go right into the webinar pane. So the screen will have changed for you, or will be in the process of changing for you. Depending on the part of the world that you are in, it can take up to 30 seconds for the screen to change. All right. So what you'd see once the screen has actually transitioned into the new pod is you'd see a slide which says GMAT reading comprehension, it says agenda, and then you'll see my photograph. And then below that, you have a Q&A pod, or a question and answer pod. During the webinar, if you have any question, you can post that question in the Q&A pod, and Sandeep or Payal will make sure that it does get answered. There's essentially 3 parts to this webinar. In the first part, we'll give a brief introduction to e-GMAT. That will be about 15 minutes. In the next part, we'll go right into the core of the session, and Payal will take over in this part, and that's going to be about 105 minutes. And the last part is going to be an open-ended Q&A. Now, okay. With that, let's start with the first part of the webinar, which is an introduction to e-GMAT. So early on, I asked this question: what's your target GMAT score? And upwards of 50% of you said that, hey, my target GMAT scores upwards of 720. At least it was 730 to 750 bracket. While that may be the case, statistically, only 6% of the people get to that score. And this is despite the fact that GMAT scores at top business schools, they continue to go up. In fact, Tuck this year had the highest average GMAT score reported, uh, if you've been reading Poets and Quants. And so what is it that people who get to those high GMAT scores do? A good number of them use e-GMAT. Why do we say that? When you look at the number of verified reviews on leading forums, uh, or when you look at the number of success stories that mention e-GMAT versus other prep companies, you're going to find a very, very similar narrative. Um, e-GMAT accounts for more verified reviews than most of the other, all of the other major prep companies combined do. Similarly, when you look at the number of success stories, more students mention e-GMAT than do mention the other major prep companies. Okay, so there's one thing that separates us or our offerings from the offerings from other prep companies that makes our students more successful. What is it? It's our approach or the architecture of the learning that we provide. So when you think about architectures of learning that exist today, what you're going to find is that there are two different architectures of learning that exist today. One is what we call as the book-based architecture, and the second is the private tutoring-based architecture. When you map the courses that exist today, whether they are textual courses, audiovisual courses, courses that include quizzes, and so on and so forth, to these two architectures, what you're going to find is that most of the courses out there are centered around this book-based architecture. Whereas when you map the content that we provide along with the technology platform that goes along with it, what you're going to find is that e-GMAT's built around this private tutoring-based architecture. So to understand how is one architecture more effective than the other when it comes to helping you ace the GMAT, um, let's kind of look at how do you efficiently go about acing the GMAT. So if you want to ace the GMAT, the first thing you need to do is to create a path towards the goal. And this path, which we call as a study plan, needs to be personalized to your strengths and weaknesses. And it needs to ensure that you leverage your strengths and you spend enough time so that you overcome your weaknesses and get a good score in them. Um, so first you need to create that path. Then you need to make sure that you learn the concepts that you need to learn. Just merely knowing the concepts isn't enough. You need to be able to apply those concepts as well. And you need to get so good at applying those concepts that you attain a level of mastery that's far superior to others, that puts you in the top 5, top 4, top 3 percentile of students worldwide. So let's see how a book-based approach tackles this challenge. A book-based approach is all about autonomy. So when you study using a book, you get a few study plans. These study plans may not be personalized to you. Most books will give you a quant focus and a verbal focus study plan. You have to choose one of those study plans and then move forward. Then a book teaches you concepts. Now, books do a really good job of providing a lot of information to you, but when you learn a concept, that onus of validation as to whether you've learned the concept properly is completely on you. When 1,000 people go through a chapter in a book, they learn to 1,000 different degrees. However, books do very little to provide that feedback as to whether they've learned well enough or not. Then the next thing is application of concepts. Uh, so one area where books don't do as great a job is teaching you how to apply the concepts. Just the very static nature of books is not very conducive to tell you, hey, when you solve a problem, do this in step 1, do this in step 2, do this in step 3, and so on and so forth. Also, when you make a mistake, just because a book isn't dynamic, it becomes very difficult for a book to point out why you made that mistake. Did you make that mistake in step 1? Did you make that mistake because you couldn't understand what the answer choice was saying, and so on and so forth? And you're going to see some of that later on in this webinar. So as a result, people who follow the book-based approach, they essentially resort to solving hundreds and hundreds of questions, and a few do master application, but they are amongst the best and the brightest. And when it comes to evaluation of mastery at an overall level, people who follow the book-based approach resort to taking tens of mock tests. And again, when you take a mock test, that onus of evaluation is completely on the student. Let's see how a private tutoring-based architecture addresses this. A private tutoring based architecture, when you work with a good private tutor, the first thing that a good private tutor would do is he'll evaluate you, understand your strengths and weaknesses, and based on it, will create a personalized study plan that includes a sequence in which you have to study, that includes a level of proficiency that you have to attain, and the amount of time that you need to get to that level of proficiency. Then a good private tutor will teach you concepts and evaluate you as you learn those concepts, giving you feedback on areas that you still need to work on. Similarly, when you solve questions with a private tutor will tell you how do you approach a particular question? What do you do in step one? What information do you extract? What do you do in step two? How do you apply what you already know on that information? And then in step three, how do you get an answer? And then as you solve more and more questions, a good private tutor will evaluate how good you've gotten. And once you've attained a certain level, he'll make sure that you move from one particular topic to the other. So what's the difference between these two architectures? Um, while you're learning the same content in both these architectures, the extent of mastery, the extent of personalization and the extent of feedback is a lot more in a private tutoring based approach. And you can really see why a private tutor based approach is a lot more successful in helping you get to your target GMAT score on a test such as the GMAT, which in my opinion, is a zero-sum game where hey, if you get a 740, there's someone else who does not get a 740. So let's see, why do we say that most of the other courses out there are built around this book-based architecture, whereas e-GMAT is built around this private tutoring-based architecture. And to do that, we're going to take a case study where a student is starting from a starting score of 600 and aiming to get to a score of 720. So he's looking for a 120 point score improvement, which is not so less, but it's not a 200 point score improvement that it requires, two and a half months to get there. So how do we approach this? The first thing that you need to do is to create that personalized study plan. And to do that, you have to do three things. You have to define what your starting abilities are. Remember, a private tutor looks at and tells you what your strengths and weaknesses are. Then you need to define milestones that will help you get to that 720 score. And then you need to make sure that you study only the relevant portions of the course. So how do we go about defining milestones? We ask you to take what we call as a Sigma X mock. What is a Sigma X mock? It's the world's only mock test that gives you your ability scores in sentence correction, critical reasoning, reading comprehension, arithmetic, and algebra. So when you do that, you get 5 different ability scores, which provide excellent starting points. Now, the next thing that you need to do is to set your milestones, which tell you how would you get to that 720 score. How do you do that? You use our AI-driven tool called GMAT Planner that helps you define those milestones. So how does this tool work? It will take your starting score. In this case, let's say your score is 600 with a Q44 and a V28. Based on what arithmetic and algebra scores you have over here and what SCCR and RC scores you have over here, this tool has AI built in, and it can recommend not only a target quant and a target verbal score, which would be the most efficient way to get there, but also it can recommend the abilities to get to a Q50 or the abilities to get to a V38. And in this case, what the tool has recommended is that you get to an 83rd percentile in arithmetic and algebra, you excel in SC, you do really good in CR, and you do above average in RC. Okay, so when this happens, your overall GMAT preparation becomes a set of 5 milestones. You go from a certain starting score in arithmetic, which you attained in the Sigma X mock, to a certain target score in arithmetic, or a certain starting score in sentence correction to a certain target ability score in sentence correction. So your GMAT preparation is a set of 5 different milestones. Then it creates that personalized study plan, and in this you get a time estimate based on how many hours you study every week, and it takes that into account to really say, hey, this is the amount of time that you'll need to study for arithmetic, this is the amount of time that you need to study for algebra, and you can really see, since your starting score in algebra is lower, you need to put in more effort in algebra. Similarly, in sentence correction, critical reasoning and in reading comprehension as well. So it tells you where to put in that effort so you can maximize your score improvement. So again, when this happens, you have a very clear idea as to where you're going to spend that time, what is that ability that you're going to aim for. And the beauty of this is that it also generates this calendar view for you, taking into account how much time you're going to put in during the weekday or during the weekend. And you get this view and you know how much effort you need to put in overall. So why did we spend upwards of 1,000 hours building this planner so that each one of you can build your personalized study plan in less than 7 minutes. The next thing is teaching you concepts. A good private tutor will will teach you concepts and give you feedback on how well you've learned that concept. The e-GMAT platform is designed to do that. What you see over here is our subject verb module. You can see that over here, and all the concepts that we give to you to teach subject verb. When you learn a concept and anything that has a video icon over here is a concept file, it has a built-in quiz that gives you feedback that is personalized to, to the amount of learning that you've demonstrated. Again, this time is tracked as well. This is the amount of time you spent on the particular video lesson. Now, how does this compare to another course out there? So this is another popular course by Magoosh, and what you really see over here is you see a few concepts, but you don't see any feedback. This time that you really see is the time of this is the length of the video. It's not the time that you spent on this particular video. The intent over here is not to provide personalized feedback, but just to provide learning, which is in an audiovisual fashion, essentially, but using the same architecture that the book provides. The next thing is teaching you how to apply those concepts. And to do that, we've created this entity called an application file within the e-GMAT course. In this file, we tell you how do you solve a question that tests subject verb. What do you do in step one? What do you do in step two? What do you do in step three? Then we evaluate you on that. And then we give you a set of select official questions that test that concept. And this is how every module, whether it's a quant module or a verbal module, is architected. Again, when you compare it with the Magoosh course, what you're going to find is that there is a quiz over here at the bottom, but that quiz is common not just to subject verb, but also to auxiliary verbs and to pronouns. Again, you don't get a score. The idea really is just to give you practice and not to give you feedback. The next step is evaluation of mastery. You've been studying subject verb, you've been learning how to apply it. How do you know whether you're among those top 90 percentile or in sentence correction? At e-GMAT, we've created this product called Radium, which has ability quizzes in SCCRRC, number properties, arithmetic, and so on and so forth, and in which you take an ability quiz, and it'll give you an ability score, and it'll give you insights as to where you're faltering. So after going through the SC course, you can take an SC ability quiz, you can get this data, and what this data tells you is that this particular student is faltering in comparison. So the beauty of this is this student can go back to the comparison module, revise that module, come back and take another ability quiz and track his improvement. So what you can really see is why is it that we say that most of the other courses out there are built around this book-based architecture, whereas e-GMAT's built around this private tutoring-based approach. So who's created this architecture? Some of GMAT clubs, top 5 rated instructors have created this architecture. Each one of these instructors works full time on helping you ace the GMAT. And these instructors are constantly evaluated much more frequently on GMAT Club. So while only 6% of the students get to that score of 720 or higher, you can really see why a good percentage of them use e-GMAT. With that, I've come to the end of my introduction. If you want to stay updated with all things e-GMAT, if you want to stay updated with most things that go on in the MBA and B school world, You can connect with me on my LinkedIn. I have upwards of 12,000 students who are connected with me on my LinkedIn. With that, I'm now going to invite Payal to start the second part of this webinar, which is how do you achieve GMAT reading comprehension by focusing on some key reading strategies.
Hello everyone, welcome. Good morning, good evening. Welcome to Reading Comprehension webinar, and thank you Rajat for that wonderful introduction. Let's do a quick voice check here. Can everyone hear me clearly? Please press yes if you can. All right, sounds good. Okay. So, my name is Payal Tandon. I'm one of the co-founders of e-GMAT, and today I'll be talking about reading comprehension and how is it that you can master reading comprehension questions by focusing on one small thing which a number of you do not focus on, and we're going to be talking about that through this session. And you will see that if you start to implement these reading strategies, you are going to see almost turnover in so your RC accuracy, your RC ability will really increase a lot. So we'll talk about that in this live session. So I'm going to begin first with understanding about your current RC approach. So let's talk about that. So now, so let me pose this question. Now let's say you, according to your study plan, you have to start preparing for reading comprehension from tomorrow onwards. How many of you get excited at that prospect that, okay, tomorrow I have to start preparing for reading comprehension. I am really pumped up about it. How many of you how many of you experience that? Not many of you. In fact, majority of the class does not enjoy reading comprehension. Okay. Now let me ask you this other question. Have you ever experienced a scenario in which you went through the passage, okay, and you felt that you understood the passage well, but as soon as you look at the questions, you are absolutely stumped by the questions. You almost feel as if, do these questions really belong to this passage that I just read? How many of you have experienced that scenario? Almost everyone has. Okay. All right. So tell me, why is it that, so let me ask you this. So look at this, so look at these options here. I want you to tell me which one of these reasons do you associate with. You may associate with more than one of them, but which one is the, which one basically summarizes, or which is the most common reason that you associate with? Okay, let's get a few more responses going here. So I'm going to broadcast, so the results are already being broadcasted. So let's see. Not enough time and reading speed is slow and answer choices are very close. These two have almost the same number of votes. Then the next one is not enough retention. And then passages are too complex, it also has a few votes. Okay. Now, why is it that RC is so hard? Tell me that. I mean, I'm going to give you, I want you to write down that. Why do you think RC is so hard? What makes RC so hard? What is that very fabric of RC that makes it so difficult for you? Okay, let's read a few choices. Lack of vocabulary used in RC. Okay, so what you're saying is that you do not have that stronger vocabulary that's used in reading comprehension. Not able to understand within the time constraint. Okay. A combination of long passages and not about to relate the passage to the question in a short time. It's time consuming. One needs to read between the lines and comprehend completely, right? Okay. Difference in perception of idea, approach towards summarization in GMAT. Okay. All answer choices are closed. Okay. So the the responses that I'm seeing over here are a combination of the lack of time, which is what we see in the in the first choice over here, and also with regards to the entire nature of RC, that it is a lot of information that you have to read through, and that makes it difficult for you to understand where to focus your time, how to go about reading it, should you be focusing. So how many of you are actually confused about where to focus your time in a reading comprehension passage? Okay. What are some of the reading strategies that you use today? I know I'm asking a lot of questions, but you will see why those questions are important, why it's so important to understand what it is that you're doing right now, and then go from there and basically see what actually needs to be done. So give me a few reading strategies that you apply today. Skimming through the passage, what else? I have worked backwards from the question, okay. Write short forms, read and comprehend each sentence, okay. Initial reading, read the whole passage, then paraphrase and then go to the questions, okay. Summarizing, predicting, mind map, okay. I read fast first, then see the questions, then come back and read the passage slowly, okay. Skimming through lines, first 3 lines, last 4 lines, exempting examples, okay. All right, good, very nice. I am really glad to see the detail that some of you have put into this question, so thank you. Establish intent of passage, glance at question, then come back to the passage. All right. So what I'm going to ask you now is, how many of you understand the difference between an active reader and a passive reader? I'm changing gears a little bit. I know I've been asking you about how is it that you approach RC. Now I'm talking about something slightly different. How many of you know what's the difference between an active reader and a passive reader is? Okay, for those of you who know the difference, can you please tell me what the difference is? Actively immersed, what else? Active reader takes notes while reading. Active is reading every word, passive is skimming through the passage. Okay. Active reader is the one who not only reads, who reads very often and not only during the exam, not so much. Subject comes first in active and in passive objects. Oh, no, I wasn't talking about active voice or passive voice. I was talking about active reader and a passive reader. Comprehending is the difference. Passive reader doesn't register what he or she is reading. Absolutely. So, an active reader, when he or she is reading the passage, he or she is completely immersed in the passage. Okay. At that time, when when active readers interact with the passage, they are, for them, nothing else matters in the world except for that passage that is there in front of them. And it may sound a little philosophical, but really that's how immersed they are when they are reading the passage. Okay. Their job at that time is to, their entire focus at that time is to understand everything that the author has written in the passage. They are completely immersed in it. They are actively taking notes. They are actively thinking through how the author has written this passage. Why is the author saying that? How does the author connect this bit of information with that other bit of information that he mentions after 2 or 3 lines in the passage? So he is absolutely immersed. He's absolutely engaged in the passage. Okay. Whereas a passive reader is not at all engaged. A passive reader is simply keeping himself or herself away from the passage. He's just in it because that's the passage on the screen. He's not in it with his heart. Okay. So a passive reader will not be able, now given, okay, so given this difference between an active reader and a passive reader, do you think an active reader will be able to do well in RC? given this difference between an active reader and a passive reader? Absolutely. And that is the difference between a person who aces reading comprehension and who struggles with it. An active reader aces reading comprehension, a passive reader struggles through it. So the first takeaway for you, and I want you to write that down in your notes right now, is I want you to write down, I need to become an active reader in order to ace reading comprehension. Okay, that's the first takeaway from this session for you. Okay. Now the question becomes, how do I become an active reader, right? How many of you have that question? And how many of you are right now thinking, okay, she wants us to become an active reader. Where are we going to get all this time? GMAT is a time test, right? And both of those are absolutely justified questions, and I will address both of those questions. Okay. All right. So what we're going to do in this session is, my goal over here is to help you ace reading comprehension, right? And for that, the first thing that I want to explain to you is, how do you get maximum from the passage in the first read of the passage itself before you even take a look at the questions, okay? And for that, I will introduce reading strategies to you. And for that, I'm going to also demonstrate these reading strategy through two small passages. Okay, now I'm not going to be taking up long passages, because again, the whole idea over here is, how do you read a certain portion of text, and how do you get maximum out of it? Okay, so my job over here is to convince you, is to make it, is to have you believe that, okay, this is the right method, this is the method to ace reading comprehension. So we are going to be taking two small passages to demonstrate these reading strategies, and then we're going to be talking about how do you use that information that you get from the passage to answer the questions. Okay, for that I will take up one main point question and one inference question, and in the end we're going to stitch it all together, and I'm going to create a study plan for reading comprehension for you. Okay. All right. So now let's talk about the reading strategies. The first thing that you need to do, okay, before you even start applying any of the reading strategies, is your attitude. Right now, all of you are scared of reading comprehension. Very few of you enjoy reading comprehension. Okay. That attitude needs to change. Right now, when you see a passage that does not interest you, that is from a topic that is almost alien to you. Let's say you're a science student. I'm just taking an example, and I might be typecasting over here, but let's say you are a science graduate or an engineer, and you come across a humanities passage and you're like, I don't want to read that. Versus, let's say you are a commerce graduate or you are an arts graduate, and you come across a biomedical field passage and you're like, I don't care about this. Okay, I want you to take those thoughts out of your mind. Those thoughts have no place in your mind if your goal is to ace reading comprehension. If your goal is to get to that 740, that 760 score, that V41, that V44, okay, you have to get those thoughts out of your mind. They don't belong there at all. Instead, you need to think about the passage that's given to you in the manner that, okay, the author has spent so much effort in creating this passage. The least I can do is give it my 5 to 6 minutes of diligent read through, so that I understand what the author is telling me about. Okay, you need to be invested in the passage. You need to be immersed in the passage. The moment you see the passage, you should be thinking, okay, here comes author, my friend. Let's get in a conversation about what you're trying to tell me. I'm trying to understand what it is that you have written for me. Think that passage has been written just for you, and give it its due. Do your due diligence in reading and understanding that passage. Okay, when you see that passage, regardless of what topic it is from, you must say, oh, I want to learn about this. Okay, I want to know what the author has in store for me. I really want to understand why the author has written that passage, what the author is trying to tell me. Okay. Now, all of this may sound very theoretical or very philosophical, but it's not. Okay. The minute you change your attitude, you will be able to apply those reading strategies really well. Okay. And I'll give you another example. Working out is not something which I look forward to, but I do, right? And before every workout session, I tell my mind, oh, I have to see what my trainer has in store for me. I have to see what it is that he's going to make me do today. And I just tell myself, Payal, you can do it. Okay. And that workout session, the session before which I tell myself that workout session really goes very well. Okay, that's exactly the same thing that you have to do when you read a reading comprehension passage. Tell yourself you want to read that passage. Okay, and after that, all the reading strategies are going to come naturally to you once you master those reading strategies. Okay, does this make sense? And again, I can only tell you that you need to get immersed in the passage, but it's you who have to tell your mind to be actually immersed in the passage. And that's why I'm giving you all these different ways to convince yourself to be immersed in the passage, right? Now you may, so maybe the workout example relates to you, maybe the other examples that I expressed before that workout example relate to you. You have to pick and choose which example relates to you. Okay, and then go with that. Remind yourself about that. Okay, now that being said, let's move on to the reading strategies. Once you are immersed, once you have set that attitude, you need to apply these reading strategies so that you can get the maximum from the passage. And let's talk about these reading strategies. The first one is understand the sentence structure. Okay, now what do I mean by sentence structure over here? Your RC passage is composed of paragraphs, right? A paragraph is composed of a sentence, of multiple sentences, right? Now, when you read a sentence itself is composed of multiple ideas. Okay, so I don't want you to be reading a sentence in its entirety, thinking that one sentence is the building block of a passage. Instead, I want you to think about a sentence as a group of ideas that the author has decided to put together in a single sentence. So, an idea is the building block of a reading comprehension passage. Okay, that's how you need to think about reading a sentence. That I'm reading multiple ideas that the author has written in this sentence, and for that you need to understand the sentence structure. And that is something that we teach in the Master Comprehension course. Okay, so you need to understand the sentence structure. The second thing is that as you are reading, you need to predict what the author is going to say next through the keywords that the author presents. For example, let's say the author presents a positive aspect about a certain technology. Okay, and then he says, having said that. So he's presented a positive impact of a certain technology, and then he says, having said that. So what do you think the author is going to say next? Absolutely. The author is going to give something contrasting, right? He is going to give you negative aspects or maybe something that's not so positive, right? He's going to go in a different direction because he has said, having said that. Now, what if he said, furthermore? Let's say he gave you certain positive aspects of the technology and then he used the word furthermore. What do you think the author is going to say? Additional points, elaboration, maybe giving other positive aspects about the technology, right? So even before you read what comes after these phrases, you need to pause at that time and you need to think, okay, what is the author going to tell me here? Okay, and because of the precision of the phrases that the author uses, your guess is going to be the exact same thing that the author says, because having said that, the author is going to change the direction of his argument. Furthermore, the author is going to continue in that direction. However, the author is going to give you a contrast, change the direction. Okay. So again, these keywords are very precise. So whatever you predict is what is going to happen. When that happens, but it's very important for you to pause at that time and predict. Why? Because this way you are engaging with the author. This way you are constantly interacting with the author and constantly processing the information that the author is providing you through the passage. Okay, and then when you read the next part, and when that part agrees with whatever you had predicted, you get that level of confidence that, oh yes, I am understanding this. Okay, and that level of confidence is very, very important when you are going through a lengthy reading comprehension passage. Okay, because think about this, for those 5 to 8 minutes you are invested in that passage. That passage is the only thing that you are working on during that time period. So you need to be able to give yourself that boost of confidence every now and then. And this prediction actually helps with that. Okay, it helps with cementing whatever it is that you are reading, and it helps with giving you that level of confidence. Okay? Does this make sense? Yes or no? Good. Now I have a question. Is there an exhaustive list of transition words that one can memorize? You don't need to memorize these words. These words will come very, very naturally to you as you practice in the right manner. Okay, so you have we have all the kinds of passages in the RC course as well as in Scholaranium. Then you have the official passages. As you practice these passages, you will get to experience all these most of the transition words. Okay, and the other thing is that all these transition words are already in your vocabulary, so it's not like you need to memorize them. Okay. Then I have the question, how much time do I have to read each passage? We'll come to the timing aspect in a bit. Okay. All right, so now let's move to the last one. The last reading strategy is summarize and predict what's next. Now this prediction is a little bit different from the prediction that we did in step number 2. Okay, it's a little bit different. Essentially what this is, when you are reading the passage, there will be multiple ideas thrown at you, right? Now I want you to pause whenever you feel that there is an overload of information, and believe me, you will feel that. Okay, and everyone experiences that overload at different times. Okay, I may start to feel that overload after, let's say, 2 hefty sentences in the passage. Okay, some of you may start to feel that overload after 3 sentences and not after 2 sentences. So everyone has his or her own limits as to when the overload starts to happen, and that depends on the complexity of the passage, that depends on the level of understanding that you have of that particular topic, right? So whenever you start to feel that overload, I want you to pause and I want you to summarize whatever you have read till that point in your own words. And this summarization helps tremendously, because when you summarize things, you are paraphrasing those things in your own words, and that's when the learning from the passage is really cementing in your mind. Okay, and when that happens, again, it first of all enhances your comprehension of the passage, and then it gives you that level of confidence that yes, you have the time that you invested in reading this part of the passage, you have learned a lot from that. Okay, so very, very important to summarize information. Now, if you think about it, these reading strategies are pretty much similar across the board, but they are different because they apply at different levels of the passage. For example, the first one over here, in which you had to understand the sentence structure in order to understand all the ideas presented in the passage, this one is done on the sentence level. The second one is done within a paragraph, right? The third one is done within a paragraph as well as among the paragraphs, right? So these 3 reading strategies, if you apply them, you will definitely be able to get to the level of comprehension that you need in order to answer the questions that are given to you. Okay. Now, one major thing about these three reading strategies is that when you're applying these strategies, you need to apply them slowly. Okay, that's very important. You need to apply these reading strategies slowly. You cannot rush through these reading strategies, because if you rush through these, then you are not really applying these strategies correctly. Okay. Now I know the minute you see the word slowly, that thought comes to your mind, but GMAT is a timed exam, Payal. Why do you keep forgetting that? No, I'm not forgetting that. Okay. This will work for you. It has worked for thousands of students till now. There is no reason why this is not going to work for you. Okay. But again, it's going to work only if you apply these strategies slowly. I cannot emphasize enough on this. Okay, so as I said, I will be talking about the timing aspect of it, but right now just take my word for it. Okay, trust me here, and apply these reading strategies slowly on the passage that we're going to see next. Okay, but before that, let's just talk about one tactical strategy to make your lives easier, and that is to shorten the technical terms that you read. Okay, whenever you read a technical term that you're not aware of, just shorten it up. It may be a single word, it may be multiple words. Either abbreviate the multiple words or shorten the single word that is there for you, so that these words don't act as speed bumps while you're reading the passage. Okay, so now we're going to apply these strategies slowly to one passage, and again, this is a small passage, as I said earlier. 47 word passage. Now what I'm going to do is I am going to clear this out. Can you all please click on no over here in the first poll? Let's get this number to at least 100. I have about 170 people in the class. So as I said, I'm not going to time yourself. You're not rushing. You're not racing with the clock here. Okay, what I'm going to do is when about 50% of the class clicks on yes, it means that they have read the passage. At that time, I'm going to activate the notes pane, and I'm going to start your counter for another 30 to 40 seconds. Okay, and then I'm going to give you the question. Okay. So what I want you to do is, after you're done reading the passage, I want you to write down the notes. So I'm going to activate this note pane after about 50% of the class is done reading the passage. Okay? And then I'm going to show the question as well. So go ahead. All right. Here's the note pane. All right, I'm going to give you the question now. Here's the question, and I'll get the pod as well so that you can put in your answers there. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. Okay, so about 52% of the class selected choice D. Okay, so I'm going to hide this right now. I will come to your notes in a bit after I go through the explanation here. Okay, so we will come to this as well. But tell me, how was the experience of doing this passage? And let me get the poll as well. Tell me in terms of the strategies that we have said, were you immersed in the passage? Were you able to apply any of the reading strategies? How was that experience? Tell me. I was immersed after reading 3 times, okay. And that's okay. When I say getting the maximum from the passage in the first read itself, but I don't mean that you cannot go back to certain portions of the passage while you're reading it. You can reread the passage, but by first read, what I mean is that before you even take a look at the questions. Okay, and in this case, obviously, I didn't even show you the question. Needed to read twice, and that's fine. Was trying to identify modifiers while reading, that helped, okay. I was not able to immerse given the context, okay. Good, I'm glad that you accepted that, and so now that's something which you know that you need to work on. Quite complex but short, could reread a few times in the time allocated. It was amazing. I was immersed after reading thrice. Okay-ish. All right, good. That's fine. Good. Now, this is the first time that you are applying these strategies, so it is going to take time for the method to sink in. Challenging with lots of clauses, however, reading slowly, comprehending helped absolutely, and that's the beauty of this. You need to, because the sentences are so dense. If you don't read them slowly, you will miss out on the contextually important information that the author put in those sentences. Okay, so now let's go through the passage. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to read this passage the way I read any kind of text that comes my way. Okay. And as you are looking at, so as you are listening to my explanation, I want you to write down the items that come out of my explanation. and then make a note of that. Be very critical of yourself, that were you able to identify this information when you read the passage on your own. Okay, and being that critical is going to help you understand that to what level of depth you need to go in order to read the passage. Okay. Okay, so let's start. Bordering on the extreme, one definition of ethnocentrism. I'm going to pause here, okay? And I'm going to say, okay, bordering on the extreme, what does that mean? This means that whatever the author is going to say next is exaggerated, okay? It's exaggerated. And what is the author going to say? The author is going to talk about one definition of ethnocentrism, okay? So what is exaggerated? According to the sentence structure here, what is exaggerated? Is it ethnocentrism that's exaggerated, or is it one definition of ethnocentrism that's exaggerated? It's that one definition, absolutely. Okay, so what is exaggerated? Whatever the author is going to say next about the definition of ethnocentrism, this definition itself is exaggerated. That's what the author is saying. Okay. Now we move forward. One definition of ethnocentrism considers what? Considers ethnocentrism a schismatic in-group, out-group differentiation. So some kind of differentiation. Okay. So I pause here. Some kind of differentiation. So essentially, this one definition of EC considers EC some kind of differentiation, and that difference is between people inside the group and people outside the group. Okay. In which, now when I see the phrase in which, what does that mean? In which means that whatever is going to follow next is going to present details of this differentiation. Okay. In which internal cohesion, relative peace, solidarity, loyalty, and devotion to the in-group. I pause here. Tell me, how can I summarize these words in my own words? If I were to write the summary of this part, how will I write it? Positive feelings towards in-group, absolutely. Positive feelings towards the in-group. Okay, that's what this whole thing is. Some kind of differentiation in which positive feelings, positive emotions, or love for your in-group, love for your own people, okay, are correlated, which means are linked with what? With a state of hostility toward the out-group, with hatred towards outside people, okay. And then over here, after I pause, I read which are often perceived. Now, what is this which describing? The outgroups, which the outgroups are often perceived as subhuman and or incorporation of evil. Okay. So overall, what have I read so far? What I've read so far is that, first of all, the definition of EC is the definition of EC, and EC I've simply shortened this technical term as EC so that I don't have to read this ethnocentrism again and again in the passage. Okay, so EC considers it what? Some kind of differentiation. What is this differentiation? In which positive emotions for your own people are linked with state of hostility or hatred for outside people. And by the way, these outside people are more often than not considered as subhuman or incorporation of evil. Okay, they are considered as evil. Okay. Now, the high level items that you should have identified from this small passage are, first of all, there is one definition of EC that has been presented. Okay. Then the author says that this definition is exaggerated. Now, what is this definition? According to this, following are correlated. Love for your own people is linked with hatred for outside people. Okay. So now if you think about it, the first part over here, it's given in the passage. The definition is absolutely stated in the passage. The second thing here, is an inference that you have to draw. You needed to draw that inference that bordering on the extreme implies that the definition is a bit exaggerated. So you needed to draw that inference. The third one over here is summary, that you needed to summarize this entire part into your own words, and this is how you summarize it. Okay, so really speaking, there are three different skills that you had to apply here. One is just reading the information and absorbing it. Second is you needed to draw the inference, and third is you needed to summarize it. Okay, so I'm going to ask you a poll. So let me bring out the poll here. Tell me which ones of these were you able to extract? When you read the passage on your own, which ones of these were you able to get at? Were you able to arrive at? All right, let's look through the responses. Almost everyone was able to get that there is one definition of EC. Less than half of the class was able to draw the inference. Okay, and about half of the class was able to summarize. Now, does this tell you the areas where you need to work on? Now, for people who were able to do all the three, good job, right? So again, you need to continue doing that. For people who were not able to do all the three, you need to take this as a feedback that this is the level of understanding that you need to have when you are reviewing the passage on your own. Okay, it doesn't matter whether the question is an inference question or whether the question is a main point question. Whatever regard, you need to be completely oblivious to the kind of questions that the author is going to pose on that particular passage. What you have to do is understand each and everything that is there in the passage that is given to you. Okay, and draw inferences, summarize information. And all of this you can do only when you read slowly, when you apply those reading strategies slowly. Okay, so I have a question. In the summary, you have stated that outsiders are considered evil, yes, and that's coming from here, that toward out groups which are often perceived as subhuman and or incorporation of evil. Now, does this statement mean this act of hostility is considered as an evil? No, the act of hostility is toward the out groups. Okay, so what this is saying is hatred for outside people, and by the way, these outside people are considered evil. So it's hatred for outside people, by the way, which are considered evil. Okay, that's all this is saying. Okay? All right, so comments on this part over here before we go into the question, because you will see next when we move to the question, we will see that how the inference aspect has been utilized in responding to the question. All right, so let's move to the question here. What is the main purpose of the author behind writing the paragraph? Let me bring the answer choices as well. To criticize a concept that encourages hostility. So not many of you selected that. There's no criticism here, right? So again, let's move on to the next one. To evaluate the concept of ethnocentrism while enlisting its various features. Now, what does evaluation mean? Tell me, what does evaluation mean? Absolutely. Both positives and negatives. Identifying the positives and negatives. Absolutely. Right? So, is the author evaluating the concept of ethnocentrism? No, he is not. He's simply presenting one definition of ethnocentrism. He's not evaluating the concept of ethnocentrism. The other thing, enlisting its various features. Most likely, the 24 of you who selected choice B selected this choice because you saw its various features and you thought, okay, all those positive internal cohesion, relative peace, solidarity, loyalty, devotion, all those things could be considered as features of ethnocentrism. Okay, so most likely that is why you selected choice B, and if you did, you were simply skimming on the surface of the passage. You didn't really understand the role played by those entities. Okay, and that is not the right thing to do. Okay, so choice B is wrong because first of all, there is no evaluation. Secondly, there are no various features presented over here. Now let's move to choice C. Now choice C, about 18% of the class selected this one, and this one I would say it is kind of a close choice. Why? Because it says to define the concept of ethnocentrism. Now, why is this wrong? It's wrong because the author is not defining the concept of ethnocentrism. And think about it, whenever you come across such choices that seem to be correct, put yourself in the shoes of the author and ask yourself, if my intent or if my purpose was to define a particular concept, will I use only the exaggerated definition of it? And the answer to that is no, you will not use the exaggerated definition if your purpose was to define that concept. Okay, so that's why choice C is wrong. Now let's take a look at choice D. To introduce the concept. Now again, pose this question to yourself as the author. If your purpose was to introduce the concept, will you use the exaggerated definition? Yeah, why not? If my intent is just to introduce, I can introduce it with a generally accepted definition, or I can introduce the concept by utilizing the exaggerated definition. There's nothing stopping me from doing that. Okay, so this part over here is correct. Okay, now by presenting a view on it, and this is where things get interesting. Remember that exaggerated part bordering on the extreme? That is what has been encapsulated over here by presenting a view on it. So the author has presented his view because he said that this is an exaggerated definition, and that aspect has been combined over here to create choice D. Okay, so this choice is absolutely correct. So now tell me, was this question difficult? If you apply the strategies, do you think you should be able to get there? Okay, I have a question here. Can you explain evaluate versus definition versus conceptualize versus introduce for the nature of question? All of that is covered in the course. Okay, so definitely go through the course. Okay, the approach was, but in my own approach, I was able to eliminate other options. Okay. Now you are saying that now how many of you feel that the answer choices were very close? Now the answer choices, again, we had very strong reasons to reject answer choices, right? Answer choices appear to be close when you don't have a solid understanding of the passage. Okay, but if you do have a very solid understanding of the passage, then the answer choices should not be close. In this case, if you had, and remember, half of the class was not able to identify the inference and the summarization. Okay, when you're not able to do that, then the answer choices will appear to be close. And that's the beauty of applying the reading strategies. As you apply the reading strategies, you get the maximum from the passage. And because you get the maximum from the passage, you have a very solid arsenal to reject incorrect answer choices. Okay, and that's why the answer choices stop appearing to be close. They do not appear to be close anymore. Okay, so I want you to write that down, that if you feel that answer choices are close, that's an indication that you haven't understood the passage in the right manner. Okay, take that as a clue. Go back to the passage, read it again to understand why is it that you felt that the answer choices were close. Okay. Now I have another thing. I have another question. Evaluate in choice B must have been an obvious red flag. I was stuck on the features portion. Again, features portion was absolutely incorrect, right? Because those were not features of ethnocentrism. That was just one part of the definition of ethnocentrism. Had those been features, you would have written that down in your notes, that this is feature, this is aspect 1 of ethnocentrism, this is aspect 2 of ethnocentrism, this is aspect 3 of ethnocentrism. That wasn't the case. We in fact summarized all those positive features into one. So when we summarized those, we said positive feelings towards your own people. So again, you have to understand the role played by each and every entity in the RC passage before you even go to look at the questions. Okay, I have another question. Is summarizing necessary for primary purpose questions? As I said earlier, it doesn't matter what the question is. You need to draw inferences, you need to summarize in order for you to understand the passage completely. Okay? All right. Now, this was a difficult paragraph. Okay, I will say that for sure. This was a difficult paragraph. And if you were able to answer it correctly for the right reasons, then the strategies are working for you. Okay. If you made a mistake, but you were still able to understand what was going on in the paragraph, then the strategies have started to work. Don't give up. Just keep practicing them. But if you had no idea what was going on, don't worry. It's just English language. You need to get immersed more and you need to pause more often. And at this time, I want to say something, that I can tell you all about the reading strategies. Okay, I can tell you that you apply these reading strategies and you will get closer to your GMAT score. But I can see that some of you are still holding some reservations because you are concerned about the effectiveness of these strategies given the timing aspect of the test. Okay, so for you, here's the interview with Nishant, who went from 40 percentile ability in RC to 79 percentile ability in RC, with the confidence that in his last attempt, in which he scored a 740, he would have gotten all RCs correct. Okay. Now, when you watch Nishant's interview, what you will see is that he first faltered while applying the strategies. He applied them hurriedly. Okay, he would read a passage in 2 minutes and then jump to solving questions, reread the passage to answer the questions, and accordingly he faltered. And remember, what did I tell you? These strategies cannot be applied fast. You need to read slowly. Okay. Now, despite the strategies, again, he didn't apply the strategies the right way, and that's why he was taking 1.5 to 2 minutes per question. Okay. He felt that his understanding of the passage was not sound enough to help him answer the questions, and that is when, after hearing from another successful e-GMATer, he started applying the strategies slowly. Okay, something that we've been doing in this session. And what he learned the hard way was that reading strategies are a means to the end. So there is no point in rushing through the strategies if the end goal of comprehending the passage is not met. And once he changed his mindset, and once he gave himself good 4 to 5 minutes to read the passage, he was able to answer questions in 30 seconds each. That was the level of the confidence and the power of comprehension. So definitely take a chance to take some time to go through his debrief here. All right, so now I want you to apply these strategies slowly on another passage. Can you press on no over here? Here you go. Here's the question. All right, last few seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. And let's take this away here. Now what I'm going to do is, this is an inference question, right? Before I go into the passage in detail, I want to ask you a question to test your inference skills here. So let's say you're given this passage. The author says the color blue is considered to have soothing effect on the moods of people. What will you infer from? What can you infer from the statement? Okay. So some people regard the color blue as soothing. Now, for those of you who are saying that you cannot infer that the color blue is soothing, why is that the case? Considered, absolutely. So considered, uh, it depends on mood of people. No. Consider does not mean that it's a fact. Absolutely. So and that is why. So over here, what the author is saying is the color blue is considered to have soothing effect on the moods of people. This means that there are some people who believe that blue color has soothing effect on moods of people. It's not a fact. If the author said the color blue has soothing effect, if this was the color blue has soothing effect on moods of people, in that case you would have said the color blue is soothing. But right now what the author is saying is the color blue is considered to have a soothing effect. Okay, so you all understand that particular thing, right? Now let's understand the passage over here. Again, I'm going to be applying the same strategies. EC and its canonical variants, so EC and some of its variations, are deemed to be, are considered to be intimately connected with xenophobia, xenophobia XP. Okay. Now, what is the author saying here? The author is saying that EC and its variants and XP are considered to be closely connected with xenophobia. Now, does it mean that according to the author, EC and XP are connected? With EC and XP are connected? Does the author say that as a fact that EC and XP are connected? No, absolutely not. Deemed to be connected, which means that you need to read deemed to be connected as some people think that EC and XP are closely connected. Okay, now again, just think about it. Very small, I mean, this is a single word deemed has made a difference in in the inference that you draw. It's not everyone that thinks that EC and XP are closely connected. Only some people think that EC and XP are closely connected. This is the level of detail that you absolutely need to have when you're reading the passage. Otherwise, you are not going to get the um, everything from the passage that you're supposed to. And the answer choices are going to play on that. Okay, let's read further. A complex attitude system comes sentiment structure. Okay, so all of this heavy jargon is basically simply saying a complex structure involving aversion, dislike, and antagonism. Again, these three heavy phrases, words, all they say is that hatred, vis-a-vis the strange or the alien, towards the strange or the alien, and everything that the alien represents. So all of this vis-a-vis the strange and the alien and everything that the stranger or the alien represents is just a long way of saying hatred towards strange, hatred towards alien. So what is XP? XP is nothing but a system in which there is hatred towards strange people. That's it. Strange. Hatred towards aliens, basically. Okay, so that's what XP is. Now, next we read some socio-cultural anthropologists. Now, we are talking about another set of experts. Some socio-cultural anthropologists even considered xenophobia and XP and EC opposite sides of the same coin. Okay, now what does opposite sides of the same coin mean in the context of this passage? No, not causation, not similar, not opposite of each other in the context of this sentence. Think about what the author said above. Intimately connected with xenophobia. There are some people who think that EC and XP are closely connected. And now look at this, even considered. Look at these two things together. Now, I still haven't gotten the answer which I'm looking for. Inseparable, absolutely. Coexist, absolutely. Okay, and I want you to elaborate on this a little bit. Just think about this a little bit. I have combined, and let me take away this, all of this from here. I have combined intimately connected, even, and opposite sides of same coin. And from there, I have figured out that what the author means by opposite sides of the same coin is not that they are opposite or that they are contrast of the same idea. Yes, heads and tails are opposite, right? But in the context of this passage, why the author has said this is that they are not just intimately connected, they are not just closely connected. Some experts think that they coexist, that if one exists, the other has to exist. Which means, so do you understand the implication of this? And again, this is the kind of analysis that you have to do. I'm linking three different things. One that appeared up there in the paragraph. Second, that the author has used in that same sentence. Third, again, the same sentence. Right? I'm trying to infer, why has the author said this? Why has the author said that opposite sides of the same coin? What does that mean? Okay, and this is the level of analysis that you need to do in order to understand an RC passage. And when you get into doing this analysis, you will find it very interesting because RC passages, like everything in verbal, are very, very logical. You will start to feel, oh, that's the author said that, and now he's saying this. There must be some link. Let me figure out what the link is. Okay, the reading will become very, very engaging, very enjoyable experience if you consider how the author links everything together, and if you get into the head of the author to understand why he's saying what he's saying. Does this make sense? Yes or no? Good. Now let's read further. But a few voices. But means there is a contrast here, right? So, but a few voices, but some people have cautioned that this need not be the case. So some people are saying, no, this need not be the case. And what is this over here? What is this? What does this refer to? Absolutely, may not coexist. Okay, absolutely. All right. So where are we with this? So really, in this passage, the author defines new term xenophobia. He says that okay, some people think that EC and XP coexist. There are some other experts who think otherwise, and the other thing was that there are some people who think that they are closely connected. Okay. All right. Now this thing is about inference. A correct inference is always from the point of view of the author. Okay, whenever you are asked an inference question, you always have to say, what does the author believe in? Okay, that's how you should be paraphrasing that inference question. So what you need to answer in that question is, what does the author believe in? Okay, correct inference is always from the point of view of the author. Okay, the second thing, author always believes in facts. He's a logical person. So any fact that's stated in the passage can be considered as something that the author believes in. Okay, so that's the third thing. The second thing is that inference cannot be something on which the author has not given any opinion. Okay, what do I mean by that? If the author is simply reporting that okay, person ABC or group ABC thinks blah blah blah, and he doesn't say whether he agrees with that blah 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 or whether he disagrees with that thing. Okay, so if he's not given his opinion on the thing that's stated by other people, then we cannot infer that. Okay, then in that case the author is simply reporting what other people think. He is not giving his stance on that, and that's a very very important thing. Okay, so now let's come to the answer choices. Now, would you guys want to take a look at solving the question again in the light of our analysis and in the light of understanding what the question is, what the passage is saying? Okay, so let me bring back the poll here. So this is what your responses were. I will open it up, don't worry. Yeah. All right, reopen, go ahead. Okay, I'm going to end the poll now. So there are some people who have deselected choice A. I would have expected everyone to deselect choice A. What is it saying? XP and EC are different facets of the same concept. Do everyone believe in that? Does the author has this been stated as a fact? First of all, where is this information presented in the passage? Where does the author say that XP and EC are different facets of the same concept? It's kinda over here, right? This is another interpretation, opposite sides of the same concept, different facets of the same concept, right? So you can infer this from there, right? Now, is this something which the author has said? Is this something that the author believes in? Yes or no? No. It's not something that the author believes in. The author is simply reporting that. So this cannot be the correct inference. Now, what you're saying over here is not the author, but the last sentence could cause the confusion. No, it cannot cause the confusion because over here have cautioned that this need not be the case. Again, that is also something that only a few voices are saying. Okay. So this choice is not correct. Now let's look at choice B. Choice B is absolutely correct. Why? Because this is a definition. A definition is a fact and the author is a logical person. He believes in all the facts. So this choice is correct. Now let's look at choice C. XP and EC are not connected with each other. Good, not many of you selected that. Again, no one is saying that really. You could say that, okay, the last line says have cautioned that this need not be the case, but again, that is a view of only some experts. Okay, then let's look at the canonical variants of EC are closely connected with xenophobia. Now, is this something that the author is saying, that canonical variants of EC are closely connected with xenophobia? Where is that presented? That's presented over here. EC and XP are closely connected, right? But this is a deemed view, which means that the author has not said whether he believes in that or not. Again, deemed work the same as considered. The author is simply saying there are some people who believe this to be the case, and he is not saying whether he is part of that group or not. So we cannot really say what his stance on this is. Okay, the meaning of deemed over here is the same, considered. Okay, so again, choice D is incorrect. Now again, can we say that consider is always no? No, you cannot say that. Why? Because it all depends upon what the author says next. Let's say the author says EC and its canonical variants are deemed to be intimately connected with xenophobia, and rightly so, right? If he says rightly so, then he is giving his opinion on that deemed view. Okay, that may not be a fact, but he's saying that he agrees with this group. Okay, or maybe let's say if he says EC and its canonical variants are deemed to be intimately connected with xenophobia, but that does not make sense because blah blah blah. In that case, he is saying that okay, he doesn't believe in this considered view. He does not agree with these people who believe that EC and XP are closely connected. Okay, so again, all of this, you have to understand what an inference is. An inference is from the point of view of the author. Okay, now I have a question. How do we know that author's view is in line with the variant's view? You have to, so what the student is asking is, how do I know whether the author agrees with the group or not? You have to look at the clues in the passage. In this passage, we don't have anything that says that the author believes in this deemed view. Okay, I was simply giving you certain examples of sentences in which the author could have presented his view. For example, over here, if the author said are deemed to be intimately connected and rightly so, if he inserted that rightly so over here, in that case, the author would have presented his take on this deemed view. Okay, so again, that's what it means. Okay, all right. If it said some people, would ACD be correct? Yeah, According to the author, some people think yes, but then that's not how you would get the inference. Again, inference, the point of inference question is, what does the author believe in? Why would an answer choice say, again, I'm not saying that it cannot happen, but why would the answer choice say that author thinks that some people consider XP and EC as different facets of the same concept? Okay, if that is the case, then yeah, that would be a correct choice, but I wouldn't think that that's what GMAT would want to test. Consider implies that author is not 100% sure. No, consider does not imply that. All consider says is some people think this to be true. Now, what the author believes in is not something that the author has said. Think about it this way, and again, let's go away from reading comprehension and let's go to a news channel. There are certain there are certain segments in which the presenters simply report what's happening. Okay, they do not give their opinion or their analysis, right? Those are news reporters. Okay, they are simply reporting information. Okay, there are certain other segments in which there are news analysts. They are reporting information as well as they're giving their own analysis of it. Okay, and that's the role that you have to see the author playing in the passage. Is he simply reporting or is he analyzing? Okay, so that's another way to think about that. Okay, all right, now last one. In some cases, xenophobia could be the cause of ethnocentrism. Again, there is no causal relationship here. All right. Sorry, let's get. So let's, we've done the two passages. Now tell me, what do you guys think about the process so far? First of all, tell me, do you guys trust the process? How many of you believe that this process will work? Good. Absolutely, it needs practice. And now I'm going to address the timing aspect. Okay. Yes, I will talk about the timing aspect. I am going to ask you one thing and I'm going to take you away from reading comprehension. Okay. Tell me a skill that you have built in the recent past. Recent past could be 10 years as well. A new skill that you built. Okay, let's say singing, blind typing, learned a language, okay, understanding the meaning in SC, okay, driving and drone piloting, interesting, playing guitar, business development, public speaking, okay, painting, okay, using left hand to do routine work, that's interesting. Speak a language takes time but worth the result, foreign language Spanish. All right, good, very nice. Now, my question to you is, when you started learning this skill, whichever skill you have in your mind, were you able to get to the mastery of it within the first few attempts? Yes or no? No. A new skill always takes time. Okay? New skill always takes time, and that is how I want you to consider learning these reading strategies. This is a new skill that you are building, the skill of reading properly, the skill of reading for getting complete comprehension in the first go itself. Okay, when that happens, when you are getting into that, you will take time. Okay. Now, how much time will it take? It depends. It varies from person to person. I know you've asked on an average. If you're going through the course in the right manner, then by the time you are done with main point section, you should be able to master the reading strategies really very well. Okay. What I usually tell students is that if you are solving, let's say, 10 passages, utilizing the solution and consciously trying to learn the process, 11th passage, you are going to see marked improvement in your skill. Okay, and again, it's not going to be a drastic. So the improvements are going to come in steps, right? So you will see marked improvement after 10 passages. Then again, another five passages that you do, you are going to see another set of improvement there. Okay, but again, think of this as a process. It's not something which if I tell you, okay, start applying reading strategy slowly, and then the next passage that you do, you will be able to solve it like a pro or like me. No, that's not going to happen. Okay, you are not going to be ready for the test right after this session. What you are going to be ready for is, now you know how is it that you need to be preparing for RC. Okay. All right. Now let's talk about the timing aspect here. Okay. And I'm going to breeze through this. The main thing with timing aspect is this. When you read the passage quickly, and I'm going to follow, so I am going to just walk you through the process that happens when you read the passage quickly versus the process that happens when you read the passage slowly. Now, because you have been reading the passage quickly, you should be able to relate to this one. So let me walk you through this. You read the passage quickly, let's say in 2 to 3 minutes. Okay. You come to question number 1, you read question number 1, you read choice A, you get confused, you go back to the passage. You read choice B, you again go back to the passage. You read choice C, you again go back to the passage. So in fact, for every question, for most of the choices, you need to go back and forth with the passage and the answer choices. And this itself takes about 1.5 to 2 minutes. Okay. Do you guys agree with this time distribution, more or less? So what's happening is, if you think about it, you are at a load time over here. Okay, it's not front loaded with time, but you're spending 1.5 to 2 minutes per question. Okay, and you are ending up taking 6.5 to 8 minutes, right? Now versus if you read the passage slowly, okay, what happens is, you are reading the passage slowly, you're giving yourself, I would say, 2.5 to 4 minutes, okay, depending upon the length of the passage, right? Now, because you have such a solid understanding of the passage, when you read question 1, you don't need to go back to the passage. When you read that choice A, you know right away that probably this choice is wrong, okay? So you don't really need to do the back and forth, and you are able to get to the correct choice within a minute at the most. I shared with you Nishan's success story. He was able to get to questions within 30 seconds. I'm going to be sharing some more success stories in this presentation, and you will see that they also were able to answer questions in 30 seconds, 30 to 45 seconds. So essentially, by reading the passage slowly, what you're doing is you are redistributing the time. You are front loading it, you're making it front heavy from the standpoint of time investment, but because you are investing that time upfront on the passage and you're getting everything that there is to get from the passage, you don't need that much time to solve each question. 1 minute is also at a very high level, is at an extreme. Okay, so that's all you're doing. You're not creating time, you're simply redistributing time. Does this make sense? Yes or no? Now, GMAT RC can be very easily mastered. This is the easiest of all the sections to master. And if you think about it, sentence correction, very logical exam, okay, very logical section, but there are those grammar rules. I mean, whether or not you have to focus on the meaning, but you need to also be cognizant of those concepts. Okay, critical reasoning. There is a lot of logic to apply over there. Reading comprehension, not at all. You have to stay within the context of the passage. All you have to do is understand the passage and then answer the questions. That's all. Okay. So it's really just redistribution of time. Okay. Now this is a comeback story of a student who was unable to do well because of RC. And eventually he was able to ace RC. She was able to ace RC because she mastered it. In her first attempt, she bombed her RC. Okay. I would come across an RC in the middle of my mocks, and I would feel low, I would lose time, and thereby end up rushing through my SC and CR questions as well. So she messed up her CR and SC because of RC. Then she changed her attitude towards GMAT RC. She decided to get immersed in the passage, and as she got immersed, she found comprehending easier. She was able to take good notes and get more and more questions correct. This strategy, while time consuming in the learning phase, I'm not saying that it's going to be a breeze in the learning phase. No, you are going to take time. In fact, when you are in the learning phase building this skill, you may even take up to 10 minutes or 15 minutes to read the passage. That's absolutely fine. Okay, believe me, the time will come down. Okay. Now this strategy, while time consuming in the learning phase, helped her improve her verbal score to V41, that is 94 percentile on GMAT verbal. Let's take a look at Arjun's example. This is exactly what Arjun did. He took the GMAT three times and he just could not improve his verbal score. He did everything that he could. RC was his pain point, and in his final attempt, he applied the reading strategies. He did not do anything very different from what we did in this very webinar. He applied the strategies and focused on gaining complete comprehension. He stayed calm. He focused on learning. And this is not me as an instructor telling you. This is the student who has toiled through the process. Okay, I would urge all of you to go through these interviews. Okay, now what was the result? He scored V41, okay, in his fourth attempt. And that's the magic that's possible, but there are no tricks. What you need to do is read, work diligently, toil through it. Now, let me put together the plan of action for you. The first thing that you have to do is you have to improve your comprehension. For that, we have dedicated skill building exercises. Okay. The second thing that you need to do is you need to learn how to answer various question types. Okay. Then you need to practice in the right manner. You need to cement those methods. Okay, so let's come to improving comprehension. These dedicated skill building exercises include master comprehension course. You go through master comprehension course to understand, okay, how is a sentence constructed? How can you read the sentence to get its maximum? Then you have reading strategies files. 3 files in which we explain reading strategies to you and in which we walk you through the application of those reading strategies. Okay. Then you have 3 practice files. So total of 8 passages with rigorous application of reading strategies. In my opinion, if you go through this reading strategies block, you will be able to gain that level of understanding of the reading strategies that is required. Okay, and then you further practice them as you go through the question concepts. And that's where the specialized concepts come into picture. Main point concepts 1 and 2. Okay. Again, main point practice files 1 and 2. So each of the question types we are teaching in multiple concept files, and then we are giving you the right kind of practice right there and then. Likewise, inference concepts. There are 3 concept files in which we talk about inference. Okay. Then we make you practice. The same holds true for detail and then structure. Now, after you finish the course, you have to, so you will go through the application files that are there in the course in which you apply all of this in a holistic manner. Okay. So as you can see, there is a lot of practice that is coming your way through the e-GMAT RC course. Okay. Beyond that, there are 10 ability quizzes that you can take in Scholarium to cement your methods. Okay, there are more than 45 RC passages that span across all the genres of that are tested on the test. Okay, so again, if you first build your foundation, learn the concepts that there are to learn, and the methods obviously over here, and then you cement your methods utilizing Scholarium, there is no reason why you won't be able to do well in RC. Okay. Now here's another recent example of a student who made this a habit. Anastasia is another person who took GMAT 3 times, took a private tutor the second time in Moscow. She took master comprehension course to heart, and successful students do that. They build their foundation skills. Okay. She also made sure, as Arjun did, to read the passage only once. That is the power of reading the passage really, really well. Time to answer questions comes down since you're so clear about what the passage says. Okay. So be diligent, be smart. Don't focus on quantity. Don't do the misstep of timing yourself prematurely. Don't rely on tricks. Okay, use strategies that work. And in the end, I'm going to say this: on the GMAT, speed kills. Okay, do not speed while you're answering GMAT RC questions. Okay. All right then. I do have some questions in the Q&A part that I will definitely take in a bit. But before I do that, we have come to the end of this session, by the way. Before I do that, I would want to get your feedback on the session here while I share the presentation with you. And all right, so how much time to spend approximately on a passage? If I don't get the gist of the passage and I'm stuck, should I leave it and move ahead or reread again? I think, Aditya, I've answered your question. You need to, again, you should not be worried about the timing initially. Okay, so don't worry about that. Writing summary as well. Yes, you need to be you need to be taking notes. You need to take notes, absolutely. Again, in the beginning, even if you're taking long notes, it's absolutely fine. Remember, when you take notes, you are registering, you are cementing the ideas that the author is presenting. Okay, you are writing them down in your own words, and whenever you do that, the understanding increases tenfold at least. Okay, so definitely take notes. Don't worry about the length of the notes. As you practice more, you will automatically see that your note taking skills are getting better and they're not getting in the way of too much time, in you spending too much time on the RC passage. Should I take Scholarium or OG quizzes first? You can do either. I would say go with Scholarium. And again, when you are ready to come to, after you're done with the course, send me an email and I'll share certain videos with you in which I teach you how is it that you should be utilizing Scholarium. Don't start blindly doing Scholarium. Okay, so definitely write to me when you are done with the course. I'm due to give my GMAT in 10 days. I'm scoring a V35 to V38. I wish to cross the V40 barrier. Any quick suggestions? Well, I don't know what your V38 and V35 is composed of. So you will need to so write to me with your latest mock score, and then we can take a look at your individual percentiles and SCCRRC. Remember, Rajat explained to you up front in the session how is it that you should be thinking about your prep in terms of the 3 milestones in verbal and then 2 milestones in quant. So we need to see as to where you are missing out on. All right, so thank you everyone for this, for being a wonderful audience. I will now invite Rajat back into the session so that he can take your questions. So good luck and write to me if you have any questions with regards to how you can ace GMAT.
Alright guys, we are now in the last part of the webinar, which is the open-ended Q&A. Let me put in the session PDF for you guys. Here's the session PDF. Okay, let's look at, and I want to thank everyone for those of you who've rated the session. You know, I see quite a few folks and only a few of you rated, so it'd be great if more people could rate the session. What's Pile's email address? You can email Pile at e-gmat.com. And let's just make sure we look at this. John says, I'm due to give the GMAT in 10 days. I'm scoring a V35 to V38. I wish to cross the V40 barrier. Any quick suggestions? So John, I would say what you need to do is there are 2 or 3 things that you can do. All of them include a strategic review of the kind of questions that you're getting wrong. If you're an e-GMAT student, write to pile at e-gmat.com and putting your case and requesting strategic review. So request strategic review videos, and then we'll send those videos across to you, so you can look at how to review your mistakes and learn from it to get that next 2 to 3 point improvement on that scale of 60. Apurva says, how soon should we start taking time into account while understanding the passage? Apurva, don't take time into account. Take comprehension into account. The more you start taking comprehension into account, what you're going to find is that time is going to fall in place automatically. So that's, and again, this is a process. This is not an on-off switch where you say, hey, I'm going to start doing this and then my problems would be fixed. No, what you're going to really find is that your problems reduce, and then they continue to reduce, and within 10 to 15 passages, it starts to be where you find that, okay, I'm reading the passage, I'm able to understand it, I'm able to do it in the required amount of time, and I'm very, very confident as I go to questions. So again, remember this, it's a process. Acing the GMAT it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. Mandeep says, in a time constraint, how much code is affected by guessing an entire passage? Mandeep, it depends on a few things. So it depends on what score are you currently at. So if you're, let's say, in the V40s, which is upwards of 98th percentile on verbal, if you guess a passage, you most likely will be getting a difficult passage. The impact's not going to be that much at that point in guessing a passage. Why? Because when you make a mistake on a difficult question, the penalty is not as high as when you make a mistake on an easy question. On the other hand, if you're not doing well, it's a super easy passage and you guess on it and you get wrong, the impact's a lot more severe. So if you're doing well, you make mistakes, not as much of an impact. If you're not doing well, you make mistakes, much higher impact. That's the principle on a computer adaptive test. Mohita says, how do you increase vocabulary? I'd say 2 things over there. One is that on the GMAT's not a test of vocabulary. It's a test of everyday English, and a test of comprehension and logic using everyday English. So you don't necessarily need to learn vocabulary, but again, you do need some form of business vocabulary, not crazy words like you see on the GRE or even on the LSAT. For that matter, but normal everyday day-to-day English. Now, if you believe you don't even have that vocabulary, then I would very strongly recommend reading The Economist, and The Economist for a few reasons. One, the variety of articles. Second, the length of articles. They're not crazy long. They are
one and a half page at the most. So the very manageable, and the quality of writing is very good. Aditya says, so practice is key, but how do you know the correct time to put in each para RC passage? So practice is not key. Practice using a deliberate method is key, Aditya. And there's no correct time. I think one of the things that people get into is, okay, what's the right versus what's the wrong time? And I can tell you it varies from person to person. Having helped upwards of 40,000 students, there are people who find that RC comes very naturally to them, and for them, they read the passage about 30% faster than the average. On the other hand, some other folks find CRs a lot more natural, so they're able to solve CR in much more faster, and hence are able to spend more time on RC. A few others really find, hey, they're slow in both, and for them, they focus on building their ability such that, as they go towards the last block of questions, they already are at a very high ability level. So making a few mistakes there don't impact your score as much. So there is no correct time at it, and other experts will tell you that there is, you should read a long RC in about 3.5 minutes, and most people will. But I wouldn't call it a correct time. You may be able to do that in 3 minutes. We have experts at e-GMAT who are able to do that in 2 minutes. And I may be slightly slower than them, but in the end, does that matter? No, in the end, what matters is the score. And you score high when you follow the process and you get answers right. So follow the process. KB says, I can't access the session PDF. KB, you must be on a mobile device. Yes, you are. So if you're on a mobile device, we will send the recording over to you at about 5:30 p.m. Pacific, which is 6 a.m. IST, or about 1:30 in the morning UK time, and then you can download the recording from there. Aditya also has this question. It says, last time I did the exam with 3-4 questions short and I scored a 520. I need to get a shortcut to save time. Aditya, if you have a 520, time is the least of your problems. Even if you focus on half the question and read them right, you would have gotten more than a 520. So time is the last thing that you need to worry about. And again, that's something that happens, when we get a low score, we start to blame things that are easy to blame without understanding the real cause of the problem. Frankly, if you have a 50, if you have lower than a 60th percentile on GMAT verbal, time is not limiting you. Your ability is limiting you. Time starts to limit you when you get into the 80th percentile or so. Why? Because the block 4 of questions that you see on the GMAT, they start to become important only when you get to 80th percentile or higher, which is a score of V37 or higher. Before that, time is not doesn't limit anyone on GMAT verbal. On the quant side, time starts to limit you at a Q48 or so. So again, it's a computer adaptive test. It's not a flat test, and that's something that you need to understand. All right, guys, with that, I want to thank everyone for joining me today. Once again, remember, we have some wonderful free webinars next week. So make sure you register for the same. Also go through the free concepts on main point in the free trial. And for those of you who need help with CR, go through the assumption concepts before you join the assumption webinar. And again, if you're looking to ace the GMAT, take a look at some of the courses that we have to offer. What you're going to find is they'll help you learn the concepts, learn the methods to apply the concepts, and track your improvement throughout your GMAT journey. With that, thank you very much, and good luck for your GMAT preparation. Happy studying.